All right. Good evening. Hello and
Hi.
welcome to the Coquitlam Writers Group channel. My name is Ted Yabut. In this channel, you will meet our members and learn how they finished and published their books. If you are a new writer struggling to finish your book and getting it published, watch this channel to meet authors and learn how they manage the writing and publishing process. Today, let me introduce Marie Mackay. She is a British Canadian writer, artist, and ex nurse, currently living in BC, Canada. She writes angsty romance, and the voices she brings to the paper draw from her distinct social settings in which she has lived, the many places she has traveled, and from her time in healthcare. Welcome, Marie, and thanks for being here.
Hi.
Hi.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Marie, I've known you from the early days when the Coquitlam Writers Group started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you started from England to Canada, from nursing to writing. I think it's a fascinating tale.
Yes, so I'm a immigrant to Canada. I moved from the UK when I was 12,
Mhm.
and I that's why my bio has a bit about, different places that I've lived and traveled. Um, it's always like a interesting experience living in two different countries, especially at that time of your life when you're like, the world is still sort of solidifying around you. So I
Mhm.
just think that's like very interesting.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I was a nurse. I think I was a nurse for about 5 years after high school, and I nursed into the pandemic, which was a bit of a roller coaster. And nearing the end of the pandemic, I was doing a bit of travel nursing too. So I did sort of ward nursing and I did some travel nursing. Um, but nearing the end of the pandemic, I was getting a bit burnt out. And so I went. I've written my whole life. I spent like my first book is one that like lifelong book, the one that takes you like 12 years to write. I was writing it since I
Mhm.
was like, you know, 10.
Okay.
And it was a young adult fantasy that, is just like chaotic all
Mhm.
over the place and sort
Okay.
of like where I was first doing that. But when I was sort of nearing what was sort of becoming the end of my nursing career, I decided to really go heavy into the writing. I've been part of the Coquitlam Writers Group for years. Like it's been a long time. It's been a long time. It was pre-pandemic, I think like
Mhm.
2017,
I
2018.
think so. Yeah.
Um, and I've met a lot of people through that, especially in the pandemic, because then we went online. So I had a lot of writing friends sort of all over the world. And we kind of looked into what it would take to do writing as a career. And near the end of the pandemic, so I decided to go full sort of tilt and try and write a book to market to see if it was possible for me to write for a job. And I published a 4.5 book fantasy romance series, which did pretty well. Like it did pretty well, and it kind of gave me the confidence to try and do this for a career. So
Mhm. Well,
my
hold it right there.
yep.
You introduced a very intriguing word. Right to market is something, a phrase most viewers may not be familiar with. And tell me if I've got this right or wrong. Right to market is market means that there is a certain niche or genre out there, especially in the romance sector, that has a lot of avid readers, a lot of demand. And if you find that particular niche, you will write to market. In other words, you will write a book designed for that market, and there will be a very big audience waiting to snap up your book. But you took it a step further. Not just wrote to the romance market. You found a really a hot and very engaged niche. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So my first one was the fantasy romance, and that was my first sort of I dipped my toe into writing to market. I always have a rule where like I still want to enjoy the books that I write. So I wanted to find a market that was still quite open, but that I really enjoyed. And after doing my 4 book fantasy series, I kind of I networked with a few authors who were in this other genre that was kind of getting a lot of traction called Omegaverse. And I met one of the authors when I went to a trip, 20 books to 50K, and I loved her book so much because I read it. I read this genre. And I said to her, I have this idea for this Omegaverse. And she said, she's like, okay, cool. I'll pull you into the group of authors doing it. You're going to publish it, right?
Mhm.
And next thing
Now,
you know, I'm like writing the book. And I remember I went home and I'm like, oh, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. So I wrote this book. I had this like vague idea. I was very excited about the genre. And I think that's really important too, is like being
mhm.
excited about the genre. I was so excited about it. And that kind of gave me a boost. And then I dropped the book into that sort of genre. And yeah, it took off really hard. And that's when I think I knew
Mhm.
that this might be something I could push into a proper career long term.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you again because you said another intriguing phrase, Omegaverse. Okay,
Yes.
in as few words as possible, what is the Omegaverse in this big, gigantic romance genre?
A megaverse is a genre that takes a little bit from like sort of wolf shifter ideas with
Mm,
the alpha, betas, and omegas. So a lot of times in wolf shifters romances, you'll have like alpha wolves, and then you'll have omegas, and you'll have all these different designations. So in Omegaverse, it takes a lot of those ideas, but instead of being wolf shifters, they're just people, but they have so it's a bit contemporary. Often it's contemporary, it's not always contemporary, which means that it's set in a world that looks like ours,
mhm.
but there are different designations of sort of people that have different sort of instincts. And I always just say it's like they're all really hormonal, and that's just about how it goes. They're just very angsty, they're very hormonal.
Well, I am intrigued. Viewers are going to be intrigued. We're going to talk about three of these books today. Okay. The first book that I will put on the screen is called Shattered Omega. Okay. Tell us a little bit about Shattered Omega.
Yeah, so Shattered Omega is the first book in a Omegaverse trilogy.
Mhm.
It's the fifth Omegaverse I wrote. So I've written, by the time I put Shattered Omega out, I'd written five, and I was starting to sort of try to delve into other areas of Omegaverse. Omegaverse is new enough as a genre that it still has a lot of growing room in all these different directions. A lot of people like sweet Omegaverse, sports Omegaverse, all these different kinds.
Mhm.
And there, I think the reverse harem dark doesn't have as many books in it. It does have them, but there's not loads and loads. So Shattered Omega was my sort of foray into a dark romance Omegaverse.
Okay.
It's an academy setting, so it's set in academy for three books, and
Mhm.
so yeah, it's really
Very
good
good.
fun.
The second one that we're going to talk about and feature here is called Havoc, Killed Her Alpha. Um, but before you talk about that, let's remind the viewer that these are still romance novels. At its
Yep.
core, it's still a love story, right? Except that the main characters in this love story are either alpha wolves or these are shifters. These are characters that these are fantasy characters, but at their core, they love, they hate, they suffer, they make
Yes.
mistakes, and they love again. So talk us talk, walk us through Havoc, the second book called Havoc, and the subtitle is Killed Her Alpha.
So yeah, so Havoc was that was the first book I wrote in a Megaverse. That's the one that sort of took off. And the I think the fundamental thing about Havoc that sort of grabbed attention, it was a joke title that stuck. I wasn't actually going to call it that. I was just like, why don't we just say the conflict on the title while I was naming it, and then it sort of stuck, so I kept it. But a Megaverse is a very romance based, and so there's a concept called fated mates, which means that you're destined to be with a certain pack because it's polyamory, so it's usually multiple guys. And so she's fated to this pack of alphas, but one of the alphas finds her first, and he's not very nice. And he keeps her trapped. And so the reason this book I think caught attention is because it starts with her killing her fated mate, which is the first one she's ever met. And then it backtracks into how they got to that point. And she has to fall in love with the rest of his pack, his sort of pack brothers, while they hate her for having done that. And so I think the interesting sort of like fun thing about Havoc Killed Her Alpha is how it plays on the typical tropes. So the typical tropes is you meet your pack, your fated mates, and then you
Mhm.
fall in love.
Mhm.
But to have for her to have killed him, it creates a sort of interest from the genre standpoint that you don't see very often. So I think that's why it caught fire a little bit.
Oh my God. I mean, these are so compelling plots. I mean, I guess one no wonder this genre is taken off with thousands, if not millions, of readers. I mean, once you buy one, you're hooked. You got to get more. And the third book is called Psycho Alphas, and I love
Yeah.
the subtitle. Psycho Alphas. They wanted a pet, but they got a nightmare.
So
Talk
it
about
just seems
that.
every time I write, this is my latest Omegaverse. Every time I write one, they just get more and more unhinged. This
Uh-huh.
is Omegaverse meets Harley Quinn, um, the Joker. So it's very dark. It's sort of set in like there is, there's themes of trafficking, there's lots of these things, but it's this very unhinged Omega. Usually you see in these books the guys are very unhinged, they're very possessive, they're very obsessed, and they're a little crazy. But in this one I flipped it so that the Omega is also, so
Mhm.
she's off her rocker loopy, very obsessed, very possessive. It's really cute. So it's sort of like she has this little bunny she carries around, a little plushy bunny she carries around. She talks to it like it's a it's a person, and her alphas who think she's going to be a kinch to sort of deal with are don't know what's coming for them basically.
Let's not keep people in suspense. Do us a favor. Can you pick a page, pick an excerpt, give us the title of the book, and give us a short taste of what this Omegaverse is all about.
Okay, so I'm going to read an excerpt from Psycho Alphas. I hope this is a good excerpt. We'll just see. And it's Thistle's point of view. That's the female main character, and it's a bit into the book, but it's just a fun little foray into her mind and her experience in the world.
Mhm.
She's been captured by an alpha who is very into her, but she's not into him. And she's trying to find her fated mate, who she thinks is locked in the basement. Um, so this is the kind of crazy. Um, and currently she's angry with the other alpha that's trying to keep her from her mate. So Thistle. The rest of the afternoon went by slowly. There was a TV in my room, but I didn't want to go back there. Sorry, got to get into the swing of reading. But I didn't want to go back there. The fading echo of a shitty nest and a touchless night making my stomach turn. So I hung out on the balcony at the end of the North Wing Hall, slowly picking leaves from vines that wove around the balusters. I arranged them into shapes on the ground one by one. A flower, a lightning strike, the wonky shape of a face as I tried to picture what Rogue would look like, and a little heart with a T plus R in the middle. All the while, I murmured the words, I hate Knox, to different tunes. I couldn't find Rogue to consolidate that fact. Oh, sorry. I'm a little nervous. I couldn't find Rogue to consolidate that fact. If I couldn't find Rogue to consolidate that fact, I'd have to jam it into my brain another way. But when I finally returned to my room, dejected and frustrated, it was to stumble upon the first piece of good luck I'd had here. Upon my pillow was a heavy iron key and a note that read, Don't lose this one. Don't have more spares. Not that anyone would mind if you were stuck down there forever. Hope you get your cuddles. From V. I stared between the note and the key. Down there? Rogue was in the basement? This was it. I gathered what I needed, which involved a risky sneak into Knox's room that paid off. I shoved the key into the pocket in Bunny's back and then stuffed my gift into a little pouch that made up of a spare t-shirt. I took a clumsy climb down from the balcony and a short, painful fall onto my ass to get to the garden below, but I made it. Hugging Bunny and my pouch close, I peered around the setting sun. We were in the garden, before the outdoor bar we'd been at last night. I spotted the pillar Knox had pinned me to when he'd kissed me, and I shivered, shoving the memory down. I'd rarely been kissed like that before, but it was okay. If our cuddle assessment was right, then Knox was competing, and that meant Rogue was amazing at kissing too. I stalled for a moment. How would Knox know that? I narrowed my eyes, then bundled the all too logical challenge right off a cliff. Rogue was a kissing champion and a cuddle champion. Knox would just know from his alpha tingle that he was outmatched, or something like that. I rushed around the garden in a hurry, searching for a door that looked like it led downward, feeling a frustration as nothing appeared until, aha, there it was, a set of stone steps all the way into darkness. Fuck yes. I tugged the key from the pocket on Bunny's back, letting out a little squeak of distress as I pulled a tuft of stuffing out with it. Sorry, Bunny. I poked it all back in, then tried the lock. To my delight, the latch clicked and the doorknob turned in my grip. I froze, heart pounding out of control. This was it. This was it. Actually, really. Oh my God. Stop panicking, Bunny, I hissed, shaking him violently. Get it together. This is
It's a
a
hoot.
little crazy Omega.
You're, yeah, this is a hoot. Your heroine goes searching for her lover and he takes a stuffed bunny with her where she hides the key. It's got everything. This is great, Marie. No wonder your readers love you. Uh, now, uh, let's tell us a little bit about where people can find the book. Obviously, Amazon, but uh, uh, tell us about your you have do you have an author page? Do you have a website and all that?
Yeah, so my website, yeah, they're all on Amazon. They're on Kindle Unlimited, which means you can read them if you have a subscription there for free.
Mhm,
And I do have a website, mariemackay.com.
mhm.
And most of my books are also in audiobook now. So on mariemackay.com, you can get the link if you're an audiobook listener, because I sell them direct on my website. So if you like audiobooks, they're like I think Shattered Omega is a trilogy and you can get the whole trilogy for $20 on my website, whereas on ACX it's like $25 per book. So I have audio from my website. I would recommend there because it's cheaper.
Sure.
Or on Amazon. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Now, before we go, we all met and we all started with the Coquitlam Writers Group. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what this writing group has meant to you and how this has been able to help with your career?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think like a Quitlam Writers Group is just there. There is no way I would have had the confidence in my writing without. It's been like it must have been 7 or 8 years now. Um, that I've been in Coquitlam Writers Group. I'm just guessing. I think like
Hmm.
27. Yeah, it
Yeah,
must have been. It
yeah.
must have been. And coming every Wednesday, and bringing my work for critique and giving critique to other authors, I think it does a couple of things. Number one, um, it helps consolidate craft in a really good way. Like it creates a lot of foundation for craft when you're receiving critique and
Hmm.
when you have to give it, you have to think about craft in a way that I've never done before. It also makes you able to receive critique, which you have to be able to do if you
Hmm.
publish a book, because boy, do you get critique. You just don't
Yes.
read. And then I just think the encouragement of sort of seeing the possibility of writing books and no, it's just amazing. I absolutely love author community. I say like authors are the craziest people. And it's just I love author community so much. So I think I wouldn't have pursued it if I hadn't been a part of Quitting Writers Group 100%. It just yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Marie. We're so proud of you. We're so proud of where you started. And you're so humble. But tell the audience, very quickly, are you still a nurse, or have you decided that, you know, uh, what have you decided to do with your nursing career?
I did stop nursing probably a year and a half, 2 years ago now, I think, for writing. So yeah, this is my full-time job. So I've got to keep going. Can't stop now.
Well, we're very proud of you, and you're very modest, but you just do not give up a financially rewarding career like nursing, especially in Canada, to be a full-time writer. So more power to you, Marie. You've inspired many of us, and I'm sure you'll continue to inspire new writers who join the group. So
Thank you
I
so much.
I will post Marie Mackay's website in the description below. Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much for joining us. We would love to invite you again when you're ready to launch a new series of books, or you've stumbled into a new genre and you want your readers to know more about it. Thank you very
Perfect.
much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.